Hello again, friends. Today I wanted to cover a brief deck list for Aqua Force. My reasons for doing so is that I feel like people should be aware that Aqua Force is it's a decent deck that doesn't cost a whole lot at the moment. However, there is one card that would deter people from buying Aqua Force, and that's Maelstrom. There have been many debates over whether or not Maelstrom is a good or bad card, and what advantages he might bring to the deck. But the issue isn't really that Maelstrom is bad so much as he's just middle of the pack in terms of efficiency. I can't recommend that people run him because the other options are strictly better with the current way the deck is set up. We are sitting on a bunch of multi-attacking grade 2s that do amazing work on the Excel circle, in conjunction with RIPtide, who is 32k without a boost on a non-Excel circle, which is how you should be playing him. RIPtide, being a giftless 3, has thrown a wrench into a lot of Aqua Force's deck building because it's too good not to run, but it's also a vanilla grade 3 ride. With no mechanisms to fish for additional 3s and no real draw power, you're forced to run more grade 3s, but this isn't even really that big of a deal because Diamantes is another functioning multi-attacker. But what does this mean for Aqua Force? Well, their optimal deck lists are going to be very budget by having no space for Maelstrom, who would have comprised roughly 65% of the deck's monetary cost. With Maelstrom out of the deck, let's take a look at what we have. We have, of course, our starter and our triggers. We're running fronts instead of crits because Aqua Force has a guaranteed restand with Navel Gazer, which means that your attacks are going to always benefit off of that front trigger. Unlike, say, Nova Grapplers, where you're running a Surikaiser and you either stand the unit or you hit the trigger, you can't do both. Because that's not a problem for Aqua Force is able to really make good use out of those front triggers. Additionally, if you happen to misride any other unit, you would just be attacking Vanguard either first or second, and those front triggers would still give you just as much benefit. Moving on to the grade 1s, we have, of course, Tier Knight Theo. Theo is just free power. Free power wherever he is, and he forces a lot of on-hit pressure. Typically, I would put him behind Navel Gazer, which would be 30k. And if he hits, then you can give another unit another stage, possibly 2 stages. And it just is a very nice on-hit pressure that forces them to guard your Vanguard to compensate for the lack of critical pressure you no longer have. Obviously, for PENGU, Light Flash Signals Penguin Soldier, he has the ability to rest himself to give the card in front of him 5k, which isn't really how a lot of people think about the card. But that's great if you happen to be running Gondikas, the trial deck gift Excel grade 3. And the whole thing with that is Gondikas says he is a 17k attacker if he doesn't have a boost. With PENGU using the rest skill, he's going to become 22k, and that's going to make him a whole lot more relevant. I would say that Penguin is going to be relevant if Gondikas happens to be your ride if you happen to run Gondikas. And he also has the ability to unflip, but you're not really going to run out of counterblast because the deck is designed to use its counterblast very specifically and very efficiently. So that shouldn't be a major issue. Also, we have 4 Influent Daggers, which can be either placed on the Excel circle or placed in the front row, or even just boosting. It's just a general purpose beater. For the grade 2s, we have Tidal Assault and Algos. These are both restanding grade 2s, and you're going to attack with both of them, and then attack with your Vanguard, and then you'll be able to immediately start attacking with your RIPtides. Because these cards, in conjunction with any Vanguard, immediately enable RIPtide, Aqua Force has no reason not to max RIPtide right now, unless they're afraid of riding it. But I think that compensating for that with the extra grade 3s is how I would go about that. I think RIPtide is just too good not to run. Being 32k, it's just a crazy card. So these 2 cards are just ridiculous enablers. And then, of course, we have Lazarus, who's just 12k vanilla beat stick. Not a whole lot that can be done because the other grade 2s have costs that make them hit really hard, but you don't want to pay that cost every single time you attack with it. Whereas Lazarus is just like, I can just do it whenever. So that's why I'm sticking with Lazarus. For the grade 3s, we have 4 RIPtide, 4 Bellybuttongazer Dragon, which is just when he attacks, counterblast 1, stand a rear guard, and your Vanguard Navel Gazer gains 10,000 power, which is an amazing effect. The fact that that's a trial deck boss is pretty crazy, and he does so much for the deck. And then we have an option for the last 2 grade 3s, which is either going to be Diamantes, who can discard a card, Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1 to stand, and then he loses power. That power loss does apply for both attacks. That is something to keep in mind. And you also have Gondikas, who is the 17k attacker if he doesn't have a boost. He's pretty solid on the Excel Circle if you happen to be missing your grade 2 restanders, or if you have another Excel Circle out because you rewrote another Naval Gazer. He also works as with Penguin Soldier, and he's also not a bad Vanguard if you don't feel like calling a booster behind him, or if you have Penguin Soldier. Comparatively speaking, like, the issue with Diamantes' Vanguard is even though he can get 3,000 power when he attacks, he has to attack first, but that would interfere with both Tidal Assault and Algos doing what they would like to be doing. So that's the deck list. In terms of matchups, I'd say this deck is a coin-flipping high-roll deck. It can beat most decks if it opens well and goes first. It loses to most decks that apply any counter pressure to it. For example, in the Dimension Police matchup, Aqua Force doesn't have any draw power and might not get a Null Guard in time to stop a Dayusha from melting their face, especially if it's before they ride to grade 3. Likewise, if they're going in on the Dayusha player who is at grade 2, and they have out RIPtide, a Restander, and Gazer, there's very little the Dimension Police player can do against that onslaught. Most matchups that Aqua Force get into are going to be like this, barring Kagero because of retirement. I'm guessing Shadow Paladin because of retirement, possibly Burakumo because of Vanguard stunning, and definitely a Spark Hercules play because Aqua Force doesn't have the capacity to power up or refield, and that's going to hurt them immensely. In that sense, they're similar to Nova Grapplers with a lot of the same weaknesses, and they have similar relative strength, but they are substantially more consistent with a slightly weaker high roll due to the potential lethality of crits in the Nova build and just how the Nova Grappler deck works. I'd say that overall, Aqua Force wins out over Nova Grapplers due to consistency. The total pricing for the deck fits into the $60-ish ballpark. If you can get commons and rares from a case splitter's pile for cheap, and get a good deal on titles, which are currently making up half of the deck's cost, you could potentially get this deck for as cheap as $40, especially if you find someone who bought trial decks for the foils or the hot stamped Algos, and has a non-foil version of the trial deck for sale. That's it for this video. Have a good one.